Welcome back to another episode of Uplifting Youth Voice and Raising Awareness on the U.S. Foster Care System. This is episode 18 of season 3, the 106th episode of Resilient Voices and Beyond. And if you're new here, let me tell you, this is the perfect episode to be joining us. I'm Isabel Rodriguez, and I'm just a guest host today, but you all know and love the one and only MDDTSpeaks, Michael D. Davis Thomas. You know him, you love him. He's the CEO of the podcast. So for those of you who don't know, Resilient Voices and Beyond is a platform dedicated to embracing the once silent voices. The mission here is to empower a new generation of those who have experienced the foster care system and shatter stigmas and labels that surround reform, advocacy, and so much more. So today's episode is truly special. As you all know, we have the founder, CEO, general host of Resilient Voices Beyond here to share his insights on his lived experiences, offer his expertise, and share with us the reason he started it all. So the one and only, y'all don't need me to give y'all the rundown. Y'all know, y'all love MDDTSpeaks. So Michael, why don't you go ahead and give this audience a short rundown of your journey in foster care and tell them why this episode feels so important.
Yeah. First and foremost, you did that better than me. I might be out of a job. No, but I truly appreciate you, Isabel. Man, cool. Well, I spent approximately 11 years within the Michigan child welfare system. Grew up with a mother and father who were married at a point and then divorced. I experienced abuse from my mom and my father, and from my siblings, and severe bullying throughout my education career in public education. Which ultimately, a combination of all those different things and the environment that I was in, and let me lay out that environment a little bit. So, being from Detroit in the midst of a recession, being impoverished, not having, parents who had degrees, so neither one of them could get like your big paying job. So a lot of us, a lot of the times they were living check to check. Growing up in a Black community in a Black home, no one really talked about mental health or the supports around it. Plus abuse, and sometimes neglect. And that ultimately led to me coming to a place in my life where what I was dealing with and feeling and burdened with in life as a child, I couldn't bear anymore. And I mentally numbed out. It kind of was like an out of body experience for a few years there where I disconnected from my family, from myself, and kind of from the world. And I was just functioning, I was just surviving. I spoke on another podcast episode about me really detaching and disconnecting from what love, family love meant, and trying to find my way back throughout the system and being placed in different things and having to do group sessions, having to do therapy sessions, having to do the whole walk in a straight line and, residential treatment and so forth until I was aged out. And ultimately, trying to figure it out, how to heal, how to be a quote unquote man in society and be a altogether good human. And that kind of has been my life, doing that and figuring that all out. As you may hear and see, I figured majority of it out. I'm still learning, I'm still growing now. And I'm sharing that journey with you guys. But I definitely will say that the healing is a continuous journey. The learning is a lifetime, and that's kind of why I'm here today, to be able to provide you guys with a further insight to who I am and why I am and what makes me tick and what helps me move forward and get through the barriers of life, but also um, to answer some burning questions.
Oh, yes. Thank you so much, Michael. I know, you've been doing this podcast for a long time, and we both we were talking for everyone out there, for the audience. Michael was like, let's tell them who I am. And I was like, heck yes, let's dig into it. Let's tell them like why resilient voices and beyond, right? Like, let's answer that question for all of you listening out there. Like, where did this start? What motivates this? What keeps us going? Because let me tell you, if y'all don't know Michael, he is just running all the time. I think he's got like 10 mountains in front of him, and he stacks them on top of each other, and he just keeps going. He's always on the next move. He's always trying to get out there and provide the next best service and improve the next best thing for the next youth, for the following generation of foster youth and those in child welfare. And it's incredibly inspiring. And so we wanted to do this podcast, like he said, to talk about like, who is MDDT Speaks? Who is this behind all the scene, running the show, doing all this other, let me tell you, all the other work there is to be done. He's doing it. And so, we really wanted to offer this podcast and let you all in on who he is as a person, what's motivating him, and why he started it all. So thank you so much, Michael, for your sharing a little bit about your story and talking about those experiences that really started getting you thinking about like, who am I? How do I heal? How do I become the man, that you said that you want to be as a person? And how do you be a good human? And obviously, we'll talk about it more, but for you, part of that step was resilient voices and beyond. Like, what can I offer? What good can I put into this world? And this podcast, y'all go back, y'all listen, episode 1, season 1, 106 episodes now. Listen to them all, because that is the good being put into the world. But Michael, I wanted to move on and let's talk about it a little bit more. You talked about some of those feelings of feeling disconnected from yourself, from what is this feeling of love that I should feel? I'm feeling disconnected from it, disconnected from the world around you. You're in survival mode. You talked about that. And so I'm wondering if you might share a few key moments that inspired you to become an advocate for child welfare issues, those moments where maybe you felt like you weren't getting something and you knew deep inside you deserved it, or where you watched other youth experience something and you're like, nah, we can do better. Like, what were your yes moments? When was that moment when you said, I'm going to make a difference? I'm going to start this podcast. What was that moment and experience for you?
So there was quite a bit of yes moments, which is why, if you've been listening to the podcast, you know the saying of breadcrumbs, and me saying that they make loaves. There was a lot of breadcrumbs that eventually, as we see of my life today, makes that nice loaf of bread. So I would start by saying that a lot of these or aha moments, this is where I need to be, came to be when I was in the different residentials. Just to think about it, I, went into the system at 11 years old. I remember my first time going into a juvenile facility. I remember being put in handcuffs. Being a bulky, a young kid, they had to put 2 handcuffs and put them together. I remember sitting in a holding cell for hours on end before they even transported me to the juvenile. I remember most of the day going by and going to the juvenile, and I hadn't ate anything. And then when I got there, they offered me like a bologna sandwich or what have you. Now, I don't know about too many other people, but I have been stunted and traumatized by hot dogs, Vienna sausages, and bologna sandwiches. Like, it has permanently traumatized me. And I remember eating this and just wondering, how did I get here? Um, and I remember going to sleep. They locked me up in the cell, and all I could do um, is cry. I remember I didn't sleep that night. Um, I didn't want to be in this world anymore. Um, I didn't understand why God would bring me into this world, bring me into a family that didn't want me, said things like, wish you were aborted, or mom should have aborted you, and things like that, or call me stupid, special, retarded, all these very negative things. I didn't understand, why was I here? Like, what, for what reason to endure what this at 11? Um, and I remember, just kind of going through the motions of being in that place and going through the motions of being in that facility and just trying to figure it all out. But there was moments throughout my juvenile history and foster care history where I was the young kid, I was new in the facility and I got picked on, I got bullied, I got hurt, I got abused. And I just was in those moments, in those experiences. And to give you more of a detail, I remember one specific story where there was a kid having a crisis. Don't really remember what the crisis was about, but I remember um, yelling out. He was getting restrained in the middle of the hallway. This is like in the middle of the night. I remember yelling out because everybody else was laughing, everybody was talking, and I'm like, I'm yelling out to like, hey man, just chill out. We all trying to go to bed, like I understand, this, that, and the third, just trying to give him some encouragement, trying to chill him out. I remember waking up, going to brush my teeth that morning. The dude came around the corner. I wasn't looking and hit me in the jaw. And I just like, for me, like, I remember meditating on that. I'm like, man, I was the only one trying to give you some positivity. And, it was many moments like that until um, I kind of earned the trust of the people in those facilities and kind of earned my way because I had been there for a long period of time. I had become what you would call an OG. And there was moments where I would pray. I would, do homework, and it would start with just one person like, hey man, can I pray with you? Hey man, can I sit here and study with you? I see you out here trying to do your thing, get your grades, do your time and get out. And by the time I would leave these places, it would be the whole unit. Like, we didn't have to, like read the Bible. We didn't have to sit down and do study or do extra homework or different things like that. But I knew for myself, I had to keep myself productive, and try to see something different. And it would be whole units coming around and dedicating this time because they saw me do it. It was a moment like that. It gave me a glimpse of like, oh, okay, maybe I'm supposed to be in some kind of leadership. I don't know. Maybe this is where I'm supposed to be going. But, I quickly, just like many of us do, quickly like kind of discounted it like, no, whatever. This is just like a spoof for the moment. But it continued to happen. It continued to be things like that. I continued to be put in situations with my fellow bunkmates, unit mates, and all these other people in these facilities with me. And I was put in circumstances to educate them on recipient rights, put in certain situations to educate them on, what foster care was about, what it meant to, go the wrong way, like, how to, cope, how to deal with things. And these are things I was learning myself. But I'm sharing it because, some people just didn't have the tools. And it went from me just being a regular old degular person being picked on to like, if y'all mess with Michael, somebody would mess with them. Like, and it was weird because like I tell people, foster care residentials and juvenile placements are like mini prisons. Like, you don't have to do anything, and it's literally like a positive peer or negative peer. You become like a pod boss or whatever. But it wasn't like that, and I didn't reinforce that. But there was a level of respect that came because people valued the support that I was giving. And by the time I left, I was able to connect with a lot of people. I still connect with most of the people, that are still living, that are incarcerated. To this day, I still remember their faces. I still look out for them. I try to reach out, try to support. And that's a lot of why my work is what I do today, because everybody wasn't fortunate to become a part of MYOY, to get a scholarship, to do all these different things that the state has developed. I was fortunate to get into MYOY in a MYOY group that at that time, the coordinator had stopped allowing people from residentials to be a part of the board because there had been issues, but she saw something in me and was like, I'm gonna let you be the last one. And it was that, it was moments like that where I was fortunate to be put in places, to be brought to the table, and slowly but surely, I've became this more obedient servant, to this work, and recognize that I'm put in place to help others. And, my story is not my own.
Wow. Yeah, man. There's just so much there to unpack, and what I'll say is I don't want it to go unnoticed. For you said it. You said juvenile facilities, they're like mini prisons. They're like kid prisons, right? And it's just, you clearly are expressing that a lot of the youth who end up there, even yourself in the beginning, right? You struggle with understanding, like, who am I? Like, what am I here for? Why is this happening to me? Like, what, you said it. Why did God put me here? Right? Make me experience this. And I think in those settings, a lot of you, we see it all the time. A lot of youth start to question their worth. What are they worth? And why are they there? And they start to almost believe like they're not good people, and that they can't be, and there's no access to that. And it sounds like you battled with that, and you found a way to help yourself cope. And when other people saw that, even a glimpse of like, wow, this person's trying, they were drawn to you, and you helped them discover something that could almost bring their sense of worth back over time, and help them understand that this situation doesn't make you worthless. It doesn't make you a bad person, and it doesn't take away your potential. Right. And so there's so much to be said there. And I'm left in this moment where a lot is going. I had two siblings who both were in juvenile facilities. And so as you're talking, there's so much experience there that I could never connect to, but I've seen it, through my siblings. And it's so hard, in those settings. And I'm just like, thank gosh that Michael D. Davis Thomas was there in those settings with those people who, I'm almost here like, man, I wish my brother was in that setting with you at that time, because you're such a powerful person, and you didn't even know it at that point, but you have so much to offer. And as you say, like, God put you there so you could uplift other people. He saw it, right? He knew what he was doing, and he put you there intentionally. And you discovered part of yourself over that time, and people started seeing that. And it's just amazing, that you are where you are. And the other thing, you talk about MYOY, not for a long time letting people in residential facilities participate in the program. And let me tell you, like, I participated in MYOI. I never spent time in a residential facility, but I can speak to the value that MYOI adds to a youth who's experiencing the child welfare system in general, to their life, to their potential, to their ability to make it down the line. 10 years from now when we're all adults and doing all those things. Like, so it just speaks to what needs to be done and how much more we need to improve to get everybody to where they can have that life, to where they can see themselves as good humans and they can understand what they have to give to the world and what their purpose is. And I want to draw this back to today's title. You offered a quote, which is, historically in Resilient Voices and Beyond, a lot of people are offering quotes that reference something that means a lot to them as the title of their episode. And the quote that you offered, Michael, was, "We all have a purpose to which we are called to. It's up to you to answer it." And I want you to tell us, how does that connect to what you believe? You've been talking about it a little and I'm seeing it connect, but I want it, let's hear you say it. I want the MDDT Speaks voice. Tell us what it means.
Yeah, I often sit back and think and just wonder. And I'm a person that reflects on my life a lot. I'd spend time in the morning reflecting and thinking of intentional questions of like things of such like, how do I want to walk today? How do I want to lead? How do I want to role model? And I ask myself those to set the tone. And I hope by the end of the day I have I have a answer for each one of those questions that I asked and posed to myself. But that stems from me being in a place of just settling and trying to just survive and just live, get by. And when I say settling, there was a point in my life that I was like, I had made it through the system, juvenile system, um, getting, had exited that foster care system, was in extended foster care, and I made it, had an apartment, eventually got my car, was working, my first time going to school, and not many people, I feel like I shared this, but maybe not a lot of people understand this. When I got to college, like I was just told, like, you get to college, you make it. So I really took that word for word of what that was. Like, okay, I showed up, but I didn't put the work in. You know, I didn't I didn't understand like taking notes, doing homework, you know, in this whole sense of being an adult going to school, and ultimately I didn't do great. I stopped out of school, and I was in this place where I was out in the world working, getting certifications, just moving, or life moving past me. And I really had a moment in my life where my first apartment that I was kind of like a kind of program slash apartment, let you stay for 18 months. The second apartment I had was like full on adult, like had bills, utilities, different things like that. And it took me being evicted from that place, getting in a car accident, trying to make it to work, getting tickets because I didn't have car insurance and my car wasn't registered because I couldn't afford it. Um, Losing my job and depleting my savings, trying to pay people to get back and forth to work, trying to get another job and being told that you have a felony from when you were 14, and couldn't work as a janitor in a school. um, and just being in a place where I got really depressed, became suicidal, um, and I got to a place. There's this big bridge in near Saginaw, Michigan. It's called the Milwaukee Bridge, and I'm ready to jump off of that bridge because my life, my connections was to the things that made me who I was my apartment, my car, I had went through those foster care systems not having nothing, being depleted. When I got out, like these things meant a huge deal to me. And what stopped me from jumping off that bridge that night was the voices of the individuals, um, from the units, from the people who were younger than me that kind of looked to me as a role model, in NYOY, all those individuals who believed in me and saw the value. That kind of like it was weird. Like I can't fully give y'all the grasp, but it's like I heard all those voices talking to me in that moment, and that was kind of like the spark. Eventually went through a whole spiel of living with a friend, and that became a very toxic setting. um Lived out on the street, lived on slept on some benches, ended up in a shelter eventually, from couch surfing, living in the car, living outside. And I got to this place in the shelter, and I was just like, I don't know what going forward looks like, but I know this is not it. If this is rock bottom for me, um, I'm not committed to being okay with this place. And I think what sealed that in for me, when I was in the shelter, I met a lot of different people. I'm one of those individuals who I can learn from anyone's story. I can learn from anyone's experience. I don't believe not one person don't have anything that they can add or give you, and as a piece of advice or just from hearing what they've been through. And I um listened to the stories of the older men that was in that shelter. And it's easy when you're homeless. I don't know if anybody out there have experienced homelessness, but it's easy when you're homeless because homelessness gives you some sense of peace. It's weird. It's really weird. Like you ain't got no bills, you ain't got nothing to worry about, but trying to get your life back together. And there's some sense of peace in that, and it's easy to get comfortable with that. But I've always been an ambitious, like motivated person. And I believe that kind of pushed me to learn from those individuals. And there was one guy who had been, I believe he said he had worked for one of the automotive company as an executive, had somehow got connected to drugs, lost his family, lost connection with his kids, and was here. This man had 3 different degrees. And for me, I had been doing advocacy. I've continued to do advocacy throughout being homeless, sharing the realness of my story and what I've been through, because I'm like, I don't know who is gonna help, but I know somebody out here going through the same thing. Um, and it was so important for me to meet that guy because I had a piece of me that felt inadequate in the world that I was in still. And from that moment, listening to his story, listening to him now recognize those things, going to AA, rebuilding his life, I took from him that you can't look for things, not even places, to give you that joy, to give you that inspiration. You need to be that for yourself. And that kind of really instilled in me and motivated me. I remember going to Michigan Works and getting my resume and my cover letter. The president of my college came and did a devotional with her sorority. And I remember as she was walking out towards the entrance, I had purposefully stood back, and she was shaking everyone's hand. People were talking to her, thanking her for, the devotional. I stopped her and I was like, hey, I don't know what you can do, but I need a job and I need to get back in school. And I gave her my resume and my cover letter. And that was the start of me rebuilding my life. Um, I learned why I was in that shelter and experiencing that it was more like an epiphany. My life isn't just my own. Yes, I've experienced it. Yes, I have ownership, and who I share my story with and what have you. But there's a level of my life being connected to other people, and there's a duty to that. Um, and I live my life now from that moment forward as being a servant in this world. I'm a person of faith, so I believe that we all are gifted with spiritual gifts. I believe one of mine is being able to talk, being able to support people, and I try to utilize that and be obedient. For years, I had been kind of evading and running from what I felt that I was called to. Um, Tried sports, tried minimal advocacy, and I say minimal because like I wanted to advocate, but I wasn't trying to be nobody's leader. Wasn't trying to do all this other stuff. Um, and you know, God kind of was like shut me down and like, look, you tripping. Like I told you to go here and you still out here doing this. Like, and it took me being without everything, God taking everything away from me, that I thought made me who I was. Um, and being in a place where all I can do is connect with him and see where he wanted me to go to be in a place where I am today. And that's why I, I chose that quote because I could have chose to not answer. I could have chose to continue to evade. Um, I'm pretty sure I probably would be in a place of desperate, severe instability. Um, but I chose to answer it, and not gonna say my life is completely perfect. Not gonna say that there's not minutes where I'm helping individuals and they don't cuss me out or I don't get persecuted. I don't, lose jobs, like all these different things that happen to us as human beings. Like I'm not gonna say that life go like it's all sunshine and rainbows after you answer whatever that call is, but there's a reassurance, that I have, I know that regardless of what comes now, I'm going to be okay, and it's that perseverance, it's that resiliency, and it's that insurance that I get with my faith that helps me feel confident and walking truly and authentically within the purpose of my life.
Wow. Yeah. Every time I don't know about y'all noticing this, that every time Michael finishes up, I say wow. I'm genuinely in just like wow, like that's my soul speaking before my body. So, but I wanted that you the point you're making is so important to just really drive it home. But we all have those options to choose, right?
Mhm.
Those yes moments, those are really yes or no. And it's that drive where you say yes and you make that choice to follow your purpose or to follow your calling and to serve people, right? And so I think that's just so important to highlight. But I also want to talk about something you talked about, experiencing homelessness and experiencing poverty after basically after aging out, right? You're in that transition phase, and as you're getting ready and preparing to age out and all that stuff, you have a house, you have a car, you got your job, and suddenly you're being evicted and you get in a car accident and you can't get to work, and it spirals and it spirals and it spirals and it just keeps going. And I wanted to take a moment because last night I had the honor of being the speaker at the Congressional Coalition on Adoption Institute's Angels in Adoption event.
Mhm.
And it was incredible. And the three founders of CCAI had their opportunity. They were announced as the national angel in adoption for this year. It's the 25th year of the program. And one of them was sharing how their yes moment was watching someone take a piece of their mantle, right? A piece of what makes them, a piece of what makes them safe, what makes them feel warm. Your mantle, thinking about whatever that might look like to you. And for what they saw, it was a little girl's coat, who she was experiencing homelessness. And she was a child, she was an orphan, she's like just a young child experiencing homelessness, who had their coat, and she ripped a piece of it and tied it onto a dog that was hurt. And what your story reminds me about that story is that you had so much of your mantle. You talked about how your house, your job, your car, they made you feel some kind of security. And then one by one, those are stripped from you. And what it made me think about is your mantle, your safe, what protected you, what was giving you that sense of, I made it, was stripped from you. And just one piece of that mantle being stripped from you led to consecutively all these other experiences, which ties so closely to what it looks like to experience poverty. I mean, so many of us can speak to that as former foster youth who, before foster care, during foster care, and after aging out, experience poverty, right? And so I think about that, and it was taken from you without a choice. And in all of that, you found a way to make a choice to advocate. And I think it can be so hard to do that. You're at your point. And when you were at kind of those low moments and struggling with your mental health and stuff, you talked about hearing those voices in your head, right? Hearing those people who you cared about, or who cared about you. They're suddenly there, and they're helping you choose to follow your purpose, to let's do one more day, right? And so to the audience out there, just after that, I want you all to take this big piece from what Michael just shared, is that what you do, whoever is listening, what you do, what you say, how you talk to people, really anyone, but thinking about the child welfare population, how you talk to young people experiencing this system, it matters. How you talk about us, it matters. It can be that moment. You can be that voice that at the end of the day, when a youth is really struggling to understand that they deserve to be here, that they have a lot to offer, that they are worthy and enough to be graced in this world, everything that you do, that could be what changes and helps that youth decide to just do one more day. And I just think that's, when you shared that, Michael, I was like, wow, I've been there too. I've had several suicide attempts, and I've had suicidal ideation. And sometimes it really is that one voice that comes to mind that was like, I believe in you. And hey, I see enough potential in you to let you in MYOI, even though I'm not supposed to. I see something that, that could be what saves somebody. And so I think that's just so important. But let me get to my next question for you. You talked about in this, and what you were just sharing, you talked about that feeling of, you got to college, you got an apartment, you got a place to live, right? And you talked about that thought that you had where you're like, I thought I made it, right? And I just, let me tell you, I went to the University of Michigan, and when I went there, I was like, boy, I made it. I'm out.
Nobody tell me nothing.
Yes. I was like, I broke the chain. I'm out. I'm free. Crap. We both know that wasn't true. It all was like, I was like, well, immediately, like 2 months into starting, right, I ended up homeless. 2 months into being an undergrad, I was homeless, and I was like, what the heck do? I didn't make it, right? But here's the thing, Michael, you weren't the only one who looked at you and thought you made it. everyone around was looking at
Yeah.
you, right, and saying, look at him, he made it. He's in college. He
Oh,
experienced all this turmoil, and look at him, he made it. And it's youth, it's caseworkers, it's adult support, it's everybody. And I want you to talk about here how, what are those common misconceptions? Like, people look at you, and let's just say it now, people see foster youth get into college, and it's a common misconception that, oh, that youth made it as soon as they're accepted, as soon as they go there. So can you talk a little about the common misconceptions or stereotypes people have about foster care, about aging out, about foster youth, that maybe you've encountered throughout your experiences, but especially during your advocacy work? What are you seeing as these misconceptions that really aren't true?
so excuse me. As I get into this, I have to speak on the societal one, the societal label or stigma or misconception that we see. And, a lot of times when you grow up in poverty, if you happen to get an apartment, it don't even gotta be a good apartment. If you happen to get a car, it don't even have to be a car running on four wheels. The family that you grew up with look at you as like the rich person, you know, and they may ask you for money or ask you for favors because they don't know that you're sleeping in a house that has mold, and that was the only place that you can afford, and the closest place that you can afford to continue going to college, where you have to catch four buses, walk 3 miles, to just get to one class. And you're doing 3 part-time jobs to be able to support the rent for the moldy apartment. So like there's a societal view that is established. Now let's take that same view. Now, you go into foster care, you're because of networks like Lifetime, and Disney and pretty much everyone out there, and how they display and how they showcase what foster kids look like. you know, there's this huge negative and sad view. So when someone happens to get out of that, they're like, oh, you made it past. You're good now. There's nothing wrong with your mental health. All that stuff that you endured as a kid, it just magically vanished, you know, because now you're an adult. Now, your duty is yourself, and all these things. And that's so untrue. It's so untrue. And I'm gonna get personal here, because it wouldn't be me and my advocacy and sharing if I didn't. There's a misconception about me now, you know. And I can't speak to any other advocates out there, but I know I ain't the only one going through these things alone. Um, I advocate, I travel, I do these things, and people are like, "Oh, you made it now." This, that, and the third. There are months in my everyday where I can't be sure if I'm going to be able to make rent, because people still don't see advocates, individuals like myself, as worthy of being paid for every opportunity. Also, I'm an individual who's in this space, one of um, many, but also few that are in this space at the level that I am, that do not have a degree. So um, there's many opportunities where, in looking for jobs, people are like, yeah, they send me different things and all these other stuff. And um, before I even get to the other side of the interview or what have you, they see I don't have a degree and I'm shut down. Um, so I say all that to say, like, you know, trauma doesn't have an expiration date. It don't even have a timeline. it kind of does what it wants in a sense. It's like, if you are a parent out there, like once you have a kid, you can tell that baby to stop crying. That baby's gonna look at you like you tripping. You could tell a toddler to sit down, and that toddler is still gonna continue to roll around, um, and it takes for trauma itself, it's a journey. It's a journey for those individuals who have, PTSD, RADs, and other mental health issues and diagnosis. And to give you guys a more clearer sense, when I aged out, still out there just surviving. The last placement that I was in was a independent living pilot program. And I was the pilot kid. So, as you said, there were people instilling that, oh, you made it, you're doing good. I didn't have the opportunity in that space of being in independent living where you're supposed to, prepare yourself to transition, prepare yourself, do the mental health work and all that other stuff. I didn't have an opportunity to really get into all that because I was looked at as that kid that needed to role model for other boys in that program. And it was instilled in me in so many words that, Michael, we're looking to you. Michael, you need to do this, and one of my other podcasts with the life coach, I interviewed him and he talked about that. He shared about that. Me and him had a whole conversation about how they looked to me, and he opened up as a staff member of how they looked to me to be in this place. So when I aged out, that had kind of got trapped into my mind. Like I thought I was good because this is what everyone else said. I thought when I made it to college, I thought I was good because people said you just got to make it. When I got a job, I thought I was good because people said this is what you're supposed to do. But there's so many other steps in between. And it's no longer enough for us to say you just got to get to a destination. We have to help somebody understand once you get to that destination, what is on that list of things that you need to do to prepare yourself to be in that destination. And it took me a while to be able to get to the place to recognize that, because when I finally did recognize I needed to figure things out, I had to work through the institutionalization I endured. I couldn't just bounce to the childhood trauma. It didn't work like that. It doesn't work like that because my childhood trauma was the first I experienced, and then going into the juvenile side, there was some more trauma and PTSD put on that. And then being in the system so long and being in residentials that were many prisons, I developed institutionalization. That was on top. So when I got out, I had to go to the top and work my way to the depths, the roots of the whole trauma itself, which is the childhood trauma I endured. But it took me a year or so to get through the institutionalization to realize that I could stop pacing in my apartment, that I didn't have to ask no one to go to the bathroom, that I didn't have to look for staff in my own apartment to be able to move, to be able to do certain things, because I was so used to years of being able to function because someone told me I could. And then moving from that place to the PTSD, being able to have a restful night, without hearing somebody yell, scream, going through something, I talked about it on my other podcast where I was a positive peer. So they would put people in my room at a certain extent. When I became to be one of those individuals that were respected, they would put people in my room for protection. And there was an incident, not the only incident, but there was an incident where an individual almost got sexually assaulted in my room, and the person thought I was going on a home visit. So there's moments like that would keep me up with my PTSD. So I had to process and deal with that, and then work my way around the childhood trauma. And if anyone understands childhood trauma and the aspect of bringing you into the system and all the different things you went through, there was the physical abuse, there was the verbal abuse, there was the insecurities that developed from the verbal and physical. There was the not understanding my whole identity because I was sexually abused by a male and female. There There was the aspect of figuring how to function in a non-survival state. And that took years of processing, therapy, prayer, journaling, speaking, to be where I am today. And that's a lot of work. These things don't just leave us. It doesn't leave me today. There's still things that I'm triggered by. Not so much. Most people don't see when I'm triggered. It's just more of a, oh, that I feel that, But there was a time where, oh, I gotta leave. Y'all tripping, you know? But I'm able now to be able to function more sustainably through the scars and the wounds that I have, and there's another layer to that, because as I look to one day become a father, or become a foster parent, or, take on different leadership roles, different jobs, those may open up things that I may have thought I worked on. And that's another layer of what I have to look to and prepare myself for, and, think about on this journey of healing because of things that I went through as a kid.
Let me not say wow again. Because that was about to be the first word. But I just want to say, like, there's so much there. But to you, Michael, that I'm just so proud of the work that you have done for yourself. I think in the realm that we're both in advocacy, people are like, wow, you do so much for others. But I know just for knowing you for, I don't know, a few years now, to seeing the work that you do, to every time that we talk, I can see the work that you do on yourself. And I can also tell, Michael, sometimes when you go into survival mode and I do it too, forget to aid and tend to yourself.
Definitely.
You're so driven at caring for others because you know what it's like to not be cared for, and you know how important it is to be that for somebody else. And sometimes we as advocates, we just put ourselves under the table, under the rug, under the carpet, under the hardwood floor, so we can tend to somebody else who we know they need it just as much as we do. But you talked about it. It's like you talked about the institutionalization and that internalization of what people thought around you. And the one thing that we as advocates know, you talked about it too, advocates, we get looked at as I know to this day, me to this day, I get told it last night, amazing experience, but we're constantly told that we made it. Constantly told, like we're in this setting, and I know me personally, I struggled still every day, but to the world around me, right? They see me and they're like, wow, she made it. Wow, she's engaged and she's a keynote speaker and she's published a published author, and they see that stuff and they look at you and they're like, wow, he's traveling around the country advocating, he's got his podcast going, he's in college, he's doing all this stuff, he's working, he made it. And part of what I want to hound in here is Lloyd is, I'm not going to swear, but it makes me mad, and y'all in the audience know what I was about to say. But it does, because they forget that we're people, and what's worse is they made us internalize survival mode. I do not. I know you talked about it, and you talked about having to undo that. I, to this day, don't know how to not be in survival mode. I really don't. I talk about wanting to. I can't tell you what is that even. Look, I don't know what it looks like. I don't understand what it looks like. I never was in one place enough that I could look at the people around me and understand, what does it mean to not be in survival mode? I kind of understand what you mean by survival mode, but for me, it feels so normal, and you feel like you're just running and you're going, And hey, everyone's telling you made it. So you apparently this is what you're supposed to do. You're supposed to keep running. You're supposed to say yes to every opportunity you get. You're supposed to never stop. You're supposed to keep driving. And you what does it mean? And I want the audience, for those of you working in child welfare or working with people or who know people experiencing the child welfare system, help, please help youth understand what it means when you say to stop being in survival mode. I am a full-grown adult. Michael is a full-grown adult, and we both are still in it. And it's so hard, I think, to understand, what does it even mean to not be there? What does it even mean to slow down and to not be in survival mode? Because I don't understand the difference. I genuinely don't. And back to your point, it's because that was internalized in us, and we internalized doubt. So even if we get to a point where we think we made it, there's a part of us who's like, what if we didn't? What if we're not far enough? What if we didn't do enough? What if this doesn't last? What if I lose my home? What if I lose my one supportive adult that I have, like literally the only person I have? And there's that fear, and it's so internalized, it keeps us in survival mode. We're people pleasing so we don't lose one more person. We're locking part of ourselves down so we don't scare away one more person. We're hiding parts of our stories and who we are so we can keep one more person in our lives, because we really don't have that many. And so you talked about that, and I'm just like, man, advocates are so forgotten. We're loved. I know we're loved by people. They love what we do for others, but we're so forgotten when it comes to the questions of, how are you? What do you need? How can I support you? Not what you're doing, not how can I support your mission, which, by the way, is so important, but how can I support you, your value, your worth? How can I empower you to love yourself, to exit survival mode, to pause, right? Those are the questions we're never asked. I ain't never been once asked those questions. I don't know how many times someone has truly asked you that without being like, Michael, how can I support Resilient Voices and Beyond? Which, by the way, if you're listening right now, there are so many ways you can do that, and it's super important. And I'm not saying you shouldn't, because you definitely should. Definitely. But for once, Michael, man, I wish someone would ask you that. But I'm going to get off my soapbox. I keep talking. And I want to end. We've got a couple minutes here, Michael. Can you share with the audience, positive note, let's do this, right? Let's get y'all. I'm got to get off my soapbox. Okay. Can you share with us one memorable success from your advocacy work that you're particularly proud of? And we all know you established Resilient Voices and Beyond. So give me something from the heart, something we don't all know.
Oh, something from the heart. Man, done so much.
Good. I'm glad you're proud of a lot of stuff, because you got a lot to be proud of. Y'all, I stumped MDDTSpeaks.
I really did. I guess for me, I like, because there's so many, I guess, so many different things that I have done. But like, when I think of like, okay, are you proud of these things? Like, are these things that you like, wow, not many of those. I have to be real. It's not, to be honest. But what makes me the proudest, there have been a few. There's been a few people I've had the privilege of being in their lives. And despite all the work, but despite all the advice or input on policy, on briefings, on, different documents like reviewing book, all this, the podcast, MDD Speaks, my proudest thing will always be the impact that I have on individuals' lives. And there's one particular person that I think about, and I'm just proud that I was able to be in their life enough to help them not be in a cell, um, and not dead. Um, and see them graduate and see them make it to that other stage. Not saying that that battle isn't over for them, because as we talked about on this podcast, that there's still more after the system itself, even into your adulthood. But it's so hard to get over that hump itself. We don't see it a lot, so I think that would be my more prouder um moment, I guess, to share, is the impact that I've had in several of my mentees' lives, and just seeing them do so much greater, and I believe that's kind of what we get into this for, is Isabel, is like to ensure that nobody goes through the same thing we went through. They don't feel the same pain, they don't feel the same hurt, that is a little bit easier, it's a little bit better, until it's a lot of bit better, and I've had a lot of time and little things I've been able to do, to make it better for youth in Michigan, aging out and in care, and that makes me happy, that makes me smile, that makes me proud, um, to be Michael, to be MDDT Speaks, um, because, it's like, yay, I saved another life, another person has another chance to live another day. And that can be daunting. I know you wanted something positive.
Oh, that's
That could
real
be
though.
daunting, to some people, like, dang, is that bad? But yeah, it's that bad. A lot of people aren't making it out. Like, and when I say making it out, I look at it in the sense of you can age out of the system, but your mind can be gone. You can be locked up within yourself because of all you've been through and what the system put you through. And not a lot of people make it out mentally to be able to function in this world physically.
Mhm. And that's real. And the thing about that too is, just as a reminder, there are people that you've had that impact on. But given both of our platforms, there are so many people that are listening to this, that are seeing your work, that are out there, and they're like, what do I do? Who am I? And I think there are so many people out there that you're having that impact on, that you can't even, their names don't even come to mind. But just as a reminder inside to always remember that, because I think there's so much impact that we have that we never see, and we'll probably never know, but it's out there. And so we're at time here, and this was a great podcast. So I'm gonna wrap it up. Maybe we'll do another of these, because man, do we love getting to know the real host and what's up behind this. But I've thoroughly enjoyed this. I think this might be like top 3 podcasts for resilient voices and beyond. So it's up there, and I'm definitely gonna be pushing the heck out of this, making everybody in my car listen to it for a few weeks. About to jam out to some MDDT Speaks backstory. But I just, as a wrap up, thank you to all the audience members. Thank you to everyone listening in, and to everyone out there who's also doing work, who's committed to uplifting youth voice and raising awareness on the U.S. child welfare systems and making lasting, important changes. Again, this was season 3, episode 18, episode 106 overall of Resilient Voices and Beyond. And we're just thoroughly honored. I'm thoroughly honored to have let Michael D. Davis Thomas share some of his story and why Resilient Voices and Beyond got started. So we'll see you all again, and maybe you'll get to hear a little bit more of MDDT Speaks and why he started it all.
Definitely. You guys have a good night, good morning, good whenever you're listening to this. Talk to you guys soon.